Let's just dive right into this, okay? Imagine failing the 12th grade, hitting absolute academic rock bottom, and still somehow rising up to become one of your country's most elite police officers. Honestly, it sounds like pure fiction, doesn't it? Like something straight out of a movie script. But today, we're looking at how one guy literally did exactly that.
We're going to walk through the incredible real-life story behind the massive 2023 hit film 12 Fail. But we aren't just going to recap the movie in this explainer. We're actually going to put this inspiring story up against some pretty stark empirical data on educational inequality. We really want to figure out exactly why a comeback like this is such a wild statistical anomaly. Part 1. An unlikely success story.
So our explainer centers around Manoj Kumar Sharma. He's the son of a low-ranking clerk, and his starting point in life was the rural, poverty-stricken Chambal region of India. To give you some context, this is a place where systemic corruption is just an everyday reality. Students literally rely on school-sanctioned cheating just to scrape by and pass their exams. But Manoj's ultimate destination? Mukherjee Nagar in Delhi. It's this hyper-competitive, incredibly high-stakes hub for elite civil service coaching. Traversing this massive socioeconomic divide, it basically meant crossing between two entirely different planets.
Things finally come to a head during Manoj's critical Class 12 exams. This super strict, newly transferred officer, Deputy Superintendent of Police Dushyant Singh, rolls into town and absolutely shuts down the cheating protocols. The result? The entire school fails. And yeah, that includes Manoj. But later, when Manoj actually goes up to this officer and asks how he can become someone of his stature, the officer just gives him two words: stop cheating. That right there is the pivotal anchor quote of his whole life. It sparks this total transformation. He decides he's going to study honestly, pack up for the city, and take on the grueling UPSC exams. It's an incredibly inspiring human interest story, for sure. But let's pivot from the cinema screen to reality for a second.
Part 2. The reality of the odds.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is the cold, hard data. We're looking at a 2025 study from the International Journal of Advanced Social Studies. They analyzed access to higher education across about 1,200 participants in neighboring Pakistan. And while the physical borders are different, the systemic socioeconomic barriers they modeled here, they perfectly mirror the exact same hurdles Manoj was up against on his journey.
Part 3. Systemic barriers to education.
This data shows us exactly what students from marginalized backgrounds are truly up against, and frankly, the obstacles are mathematically daunting. For students in the lowest income bracket, higher education enrollment sits at just 12.3%. Compare that to a massive 78% for the highest income bracket. To put that into perspective, after his father gets suspended, Manoj and his brother are actually forced to run an improvised rickshaw just to put food on the table. When you look at these numbers, you really have to ask yourself, how does a kid driving a rickshaw even begin to compete with the limitless resources of that 78%?
But actually, income is only half the story. Parental education creates an even steeper cliff to climb. Look at this. Enrollment for students whose parents have no formal education is just 9.3%, compared to a staggering 90% for those whose parents have a higher education. Researchers actually found that parental education is the absolute strongest predictor of academic access. It basically creates a generational bottleneck. So Manoj wasn't just trying to pass a test. He was trying to shatter an entire generational ceiling.
And then we have the whole geography of success. Urban enrollment is sitting at 56.7%, which is nearly double the rural enrollment rate of 29.2%. So Manoj's grueling physical journey from Chambal to Delhi wasn't just, for a change of scenery. It was a mandatory migration. He literally had to move to access the basic educational infrastructure that rural areas just do not have.
So the crucial point we need to take away here is that these factors do not exist in a vacuum. Family income inequality, a lack of parental education, the whole urban versus rural divide, and gender disparities, especially for rural women, they all intersect. They stack right on top of each other to create these massive, compounding disadvantages for marginalized groups. The systemic weight of all this is just immense.
Part 4. The power to restart. Okay, so having looked at that absolute towering wall of statistics, how did Manoj actually conquer these compounded barriers? Well, he did it through a really grueling, multi-year process of failure. His journey was definitely not a straight line. Year 1, he arrives in Gwalior only to get literally all of his belongings stolen. Year 2, he completely fails the UPSC preliminaries. Year 3, he fails the main exams just because of a structural error in his essay. At this point, the guy is absolutely exhausted, but he's sustained by his mentor, Gari Bayea. Gari is a veteran aspirant who failed his own final attempt, but he ends up opening a tea stall aptly named Restart, just to support underprivileged candidates like Manoj so they can give it that crucial Year 4 attempt.
And hey, remember that 12.3% income bracket statistic we talked about earlier? To bridge that massive financial gap, Manoj couldn't exactly just walk into a bank and take out a loan. Instead, he took this incredibly grueling job working at a flour mill. He was doing extreme menial labor, cramming day and night miles away from home just to keep his studies alive and send some money back to his village.
Which brings us to the dramatic climax of this whole journey. During the final, incredibly intimidating UPSC interview panel, Manoj doesn't try to hide his past. He is completely honest and confesses to failing his 12th grade exams because of that sudden crackdown on cheating. Naturally, the panel is pretty skeptical at first, but his unyielding integrity and just raw resilience ultimately win them over. He is officially selected as an elite Indian Police Service officer. He goes on to marry his fellow aspirant Shraddha Joshi and completely, absolutely defies those impossible odds.
Part 5. A sleeper hit sensation.
Manoj's life story is such a wild statistical anomaly that when director Vidhu Vinod Chopra adapted it into the film 12th Fail, it became an absolute cultural phenomenon. The movie was made on a super modest budget of around 20 crore rupees, yet it pulled in an estimated worldwide box office collection of nearly 70 crore rupees. It was a massive sleeper hit, which really just proves how deeply this raw, grounded story about the reality of the education system resonated with audiences everywhere.
And the critical acclaim was just as loud. At the 69th Filmfare Awards, it totally swept the top categories, winning Best Film, Best Director, and Best Actor for Vikrant Massey. It then went right on to win Best Feature Film and Best Actor at the 71st National Film Awards. Critics widely praised the movie for dodging all that typical cinematic extravagance and staying completely true to the gritty, unglamorous reality of what UPSC students actually endure day in and day out.
Ultimately, 12th Fail gave millions of people the hope to just restart. It proved that pure resilience really can conquer the hardest of circumstances. But I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. As we've seen from all the academic data in this explainer, the systemic barriers of income, geography, and parental education are just massive. So while we absolutely should celebrate Manoj's incredible cinematic triumph, we kind of have to ask ourselves, should overcoming poverty and accessing higher education require a person to pull off a literal statistical miracle, or is it finally time to systematically change the odds?